This map shows the European continent in the early 1940s. Look at the vast expanse of territory firmly under the grip of a single regime. That land was held by millions of troops. A traditional frontline army facing this wall of manpower couldn't simply punch through to the center, because the architects of this occupation were insulated deep inside that territory. Safely surrounded by their own armies, these high-ranking officers operated completely out of reach of conventional Allied forces. Reaching them required abandoning the idea of massive mechanized assaults. If an entire army couldn't cross the continent, the only option was a microscopic, surgical strike. Allied command bypassed the front lines entirely. They trained exactly 2 paratroopers for the drop. Landing in heavily populated hostile territory meant their first few minutes were highly vulnerable. They dropped with massive, glaringly obvious white parachutes that had to be buried immediately before any local patrols spotted them. This scale visualization plots the harsh reality they faced upon landing. 2 isolated men, surrounded by an expanding grid of enemy combatants, operating with zero extraction plan. The entire weight of a major strategic goal now rested entirely on whether 2 individuals could stay hidden long enough to strike. Their target was one of the highest-ranking designers of the Holocaust and the brutal governor of the region. Taking him out would cripple the local command structure. This archival image shows a typical checkpoint from the period. The environment the soldiers had to navigate was heavily militarized. Every street corner, sandbag, and sign carried the threat of immediate execution if their cover slipped. To find an opening, they tracked his movements for weeks. This map shows his daily commute to his headquarters. They found one glaring flaw. At this exact hairpin turn, his vehicle was physically forced to slow down. Covert assassination doesn't require overwhelming firepower. It requires exploiting a single moment of predictable geometry. The men took their positions at the hairpin turn, waiting for the target's unescorted open-top Mercedes to approach. Right on schedule, the car navigated the tight corner. It decelerated perfectly, and the first soldier stepped out into the street to fire. But the Sten submachine gun mechanically locked up. In the middle of the street, the primary plan completely failed. Instinct took over. The second soldier instantly pulled a modified anti-tank grenade from his briefcase and hurled it at the slowing car. The explosion ripped through the street, kicking up smoke and shrapnel. In the chaos, the soldiers fled into the city, completely unsure if the blast had actually killed the target. In covert operations, survival depends entirely on how quickly you can adapt the second the blueprint falls apart. Several days later, the target succumbed to the shrapnel wounds and died in the hospital. The strike had worked. The Nazi response was immediate and savage. They tore the occupied territory apart, executing thousands of civilians in their hunt for the assassins. The 2 paratroopers were eventually cornered in the crypt of a local church. Rather than surrender to the massive assault force, they fought until they were out of options, taking their own lives. Tactical victories in asymmetrical warfare carry a heavy human cost. Striking the enemy meant absorbing a catastrophic retaliation against the very people they were trying to free. Yet eliminating that specific leader fractured the regime's regional command structure and shattered the myth that their highest officials were untouchable. While millions of soldiers fought on sprawling fronts, these 2 men accomplished a strategic decapitation that an entire field army could never reach. History is largely driven by massive mechanized forces colliding on battlefields, but this strike proved that a single strategic vulnerability could be exploited by the sacrifice of 2 isolated individuals falling from the sky.